adopt a resolution opposing Tarrant County Commissioners Court redistricting process. And again, we have to waive the rules, suspend the rules to vote on CP 333 today. Once we've done so, we can complete another vote. Can entertain a motion?
Yes, I make a motion to suspend the council rules of procedure, session 5.21, to allow this council proposal to be voted on at this meeting.
Got a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Council, please vote. Okay.
I'm sorry about that. I have comments just on this before we make our vote. This resolution today is really important that we suspend our rules, especially given the time sensitivity of Tarrant County's vote. And I think it's really important that we do so. I want to be clear that this vote is about whether Fort Worth will speak up for its residents, or whether or not it'll remain silent while county level decisions impact the voices of our residents. As I was thinking about what to say, I was reminded of one of my favorite scriptures, Proverbs 31:8. It says, "Speak out for those who cannot speak, for the rights of all the destitute." And I believe that as a council member, I have been very clear and very consistent about the importance of ensuring that the voices of all of our residents are heard, irrespective of what decision we make, and that our voices of our neighbors are critical for decisions we make, both large and small. I also want to be clear that Tarrant County has already completed redistricting in 2021. A Republican-led Commissioners Court hired a law firm, reviewed the 2020 census data, examined population growth, and voted to keep the existing maps. That wasn't inaction. That was a clear and deliberate act. That's the truth, and there's no rewriting of that narrative, and no rewriting can change it. When the city of Fort Worth redistricted, we did it right. We took our time. It was quite a few months, if not years, that we went through that process, and we welcomed community input every step of the way. Residents weren't just allowed to give comment. They weren't just allowed to attend hearings. We gave access to the data and to the map software for residents to not only draw their maps, but to submit them. And the horseshoe map, which elected our first Latina ever, Councilwoman Jeanette Martinez, which has been an honor to serve with you, was a product of a map submitted by a resident. Real democracy in progress and in process. Communities of interest also had a seat at the table. The process centered people, not politics. Many neighborhoods, including neighborhood leaders that are in this room, like Daryl Davis, were involved in the process, and ensured that all communities of interest had a voice, and ultimately that the map that we adopted overwhelmingly honored community of interest preference on which district they would like to be represented by, including the historic Lake Como, which I'm proud to represent. And I'm proud to be, I believe if the record reflects that I'm the first African-American to ever represent the historic Lake Como community on the city council. So what's happening at the county is exactly opposite of what Fort Worth does best, and that's putting people first. This process was rushed by the county. It lacked transparency, and ultimately it left the public out. Even with the public hearings, the law firm who was responsible for drawing these egregious maps was too scared to even come into the community center at Como because they feared their life. And I told them Como is perfectly safe. But I guess if you're from DC and you're only here in Fort Worth for partisan politics, it doesn't really matter. Maps in this process were created quickly by outsiders with no real space or no real concern about local neighbors or communities or neighborhoods to be heard or involved. This kind of process is not just flawed, it's dangerous to our democracy. This democracy was built on representation, and right now I feel like I'm being overtaxed without due representation, and this map will certainly do that. Because if people don't trust how their representation is shaped, then ultimately we're eroding faith and trust in our very institution called democracy. This isn't just a county issue. This is damn well a Fort Worth issue. Fort Worth is the largest city in Tarrant County, and we owe it as the big sister in this county to speak up when injustice occurs, no matter whether it's convenient, expedient, or whether special interests or millionaires disagree whether we should or not. If the city doesn't speak now, when will their voices be heard? If the city doesn't speak now, will we cut our residents out of the process? This isn't about partisanship. This is about principle. This is about morality. This is about ethics. This is about good governance. This is about good, fair government. And it's incumbent upon us as a city council to speak up and to make sure that government indeed works for the people. This is about truth. This is about transparency. This is about standing up for the people we represent. Even when they're bullied, we have a right to stand up. Voting to waive the rules today is about giving Fort Worth a voice in the process, and this vote will certainly shape the future of our city. We owe it to our residents to act with integrity and to make sure that they are not left out of decisions that define their representation. This is indeed a defining moment, my friends. I hope you vote wisely.
Additional discussion, Councilmember Larsdorf.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. A couple things I've heard so far is communities around the city, which I'm sure there certainly are. I've yet to hear anything from District 4. However, I do agree there's yet another issue with process, and we seem to talk about that as a body quite a bit. And right now, my issue isn't necessarily with the process with Tarrant County, it's actually with this own body. On Friday, whenever we got the word of this council proposal, which keyword there being council proposal, not individual proposal, is interesting. I was like, all right, well, I'm sure I'll get a phone call or an email explaining how it's affecting their particular districts and how I can be of assistance in that. However, that never came, which I find interesting. We say it's nonpartisan, yet you look at this proposal, it definitely quite is. And I'm glad Ms. West brought up Keller ISD, because that's a great point. Absolutely vocal, vocally against that from day one, and the two individuals who actually came up with that brainbird idea were two staunch conservative Republicans. I had no problem with standing toe-to-toe and them, telling them their idea was absolutely idiotic and it was dumb and it was going to have a direct impact on 95% of the district that represented me. So, of course, I was going to speak up for them. Admittedly, recently I've been too concerned about Ms. Ayuso's sidewalk issues she's had because of a street repair that went awry. I've been concerned about the egrets in Park Glen and the damage they're causing and how we can get additional federal permits because we ran out of permits. So right now those birds are taking up a home there. I've been worried about Fossil Creek HOA and some of the damage that was done to the property after some stormwater repairs and trying to get everything taken care of there, and that's been a 2-year battle. And of course, I've been concerned with a lot of bond research and figuring out how I can make sure District 4 gets its share of its need in the bond. To that end, been driving just about every street in District 4 to figure out what streets need the most repair. All this, what's the point of all this? I've been focused on the things that have a direct impact on District 4. Now, you won't hear about any of that in the news, I assure you, because none of it is sexy. Absolutely. And I guarantee you no one else on council, and rightfully so, is going to be concerned about those issues either. However, I was elected to represent the members or the residents of District 4, so that's where my focus has been, not on a council proposal that, quite frankly, at the end of the day, is not going to have an impact on what Tarrant County decides to do or what not to do. I do hope that whatever they decide to do is for the right reasons and they make the right calls. However, to ask for council to waive a rule and a council to come up with this proposal without even involving all of council, quite frankly, I'm a little disappointed in that process. And so to my colleagues, I just ask in the future if there's something that's going to have a direct impact on your district and the residents of your district that we might not see in ours, have the conversation. I'm sure everyone's been able to get a hold of me whenever they needed to. Just have that conversation. That's all I ask.
Councilmember Flores, followed by Councilmember Peoples.
I appreciate the prior comments by my fellow council members. And I do agree that process is something that is more than just guidance for us, but it should be a principle that we follow as a council. Regards to this CP, my opinions are as follows. The county's mid-decade redistricting plan is unprecedented in the history of Tarrant County. Just 5 years ago, as we talked about and was mentioned by our speakers, under County Judge Glenn Whitley, the Commissioners Court voted to approve the existing county commissioner precinct maps. And the court then had a 3-2 Republican majority at that time. I oppose this mid-decade redistricting as it is not based on the most current U.S. Census data and runs counter to redistricting principles that we all abide by. In our rapidly growing and diversifying areas, off-cycle redistricting could have two impacts: lead to unfair representation and undermine the principle of equal political power for all residents and citizens. Redistricting is a political process. I think we all realize that. But it's also legally tied to the U.S. Census to ensure districts and precincts reflect accurate population data. Deviating from this schedule sets a bad precedent of redrawing lines based on political convenience instead of population accuracy and fairness. The city of Arlington and some southeast Tarrant County cities right now are questioning the legality of the county's mid-decade redistricting. Mayor Ross will share their legal analysis with our mayor and the City of Fort Worth legal team. Until that time, redistricting under this plan, it is my opinion, essentially dilutes the vote of diverse communities, packing most diverse folks into Precinct 1 and cracking Precinct 2. Tarrant County would ultimately decide how to proceed. If enacted, this litigation, litigation under the Voting Rights Act will likely occur for dilution of the vote of protected communities. And those are my comments.
Councilmember Peoples, followed by Councilmember Martinez.
So as the newest member of this august body, I just went through a session with our city manager, our city attorney, our city secretary, our city auditor, and they explained to me that the council proposal only requires 4 signatures. And so if there is anybody who is offended that they did not get contacted, I believe that the whole effort was to get the 4 signatures. So for anybody who feels left out of the process, I just happened to be in the office on 3 o'clock on a Friday and was there to be able to discuss it. But I think what we're asking today is about suspending the rules so that we can vote on this process. And I think it's important that we understand that we just voted on CP 332 to suspend the rules. And so this is something we have always done. My understanding is when I went back and researched it, we have always voted to suspend the rules. So I think it's important that we look, when we talk about prior actions, that we try to remain consistent. And the other thing I'd say, when I looked at the faces of our amazing young visitors today, I see resilience, I see intelligence, I see creativity, but most important, I see promise. I see the next generation of leaders that are going to lead this amazing, extraordinary city. And I know that the decisions we make today will affect them, each and every one of them. And I'm asking that we all join together as citizens of Fort Worth to send a message that we care about each and every resident, and we care about each and every student sitting in this chamber today. Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez, followed by Councilmember Beck.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, as you can see, several of us have different opinions, and that comes from a different perspective, each of our own perspectives. So here's mine. While I'm not necessarily against the process of mid-decade redistricting, I am opposed to a process that is rushed, not transparent, and one that could impact vital infrastructure improvements that are in various stages of planned construction. How can we trust a legal firm that refuses to answer questions, that refuses to address the public, that refuses to attend public meetings? The public has no access to software to design their own maps. Believe me when I tell you this is a move of self-interest, one that is targeted, and one that merits ramifications.
Councilmember Beck?
Thank you, Mayor. The majority of us here on this dais went through the very, very painful process of redistricting for this city. It was not easy. It was wrought with Are we back on? Amongst us here on this dais and the community. But it's a process that I can say that I'm proud to be part of. Not only did it produce maps that are reflective of our community, but it produced maps that allowed this dais to be reflective of the community of Fort Worth. And you see that by the great diversity on this council. And I don't just mean in our color, but in our socioeconomic backgrounds and our experiences here on council. We have a wealth of diversity, and that is because we had well-drawn, well-thought-out maps that produced some great leaders that sit on this dais today with me. We don't see that with the county's process. It's certainly not one that they should be proud of. They will tell you that it is a blatant partisan grab. In fact, they have been very vocal about it. Commissioner Ramirez blatantly said in his op-ed to the Star-Telegram that it was to keep Tarrant County conservative. And while we know partisan gerrymandering is legal, the question begs, is this really what we're doing? Is that really the right thing to do for the residents of Tarrant County? And the answer is no. By diluting voices of our brown, black, and Asian community, our county commissioners are not producing maps that will produce leaders that are reflective of the people here in Tarrant County. Now, some will ask, what does this resolution do today? It's not binding on our county government, and it's not. But it sends a clear message, the same way that we stood with our gold ribbons on our chest that Councilmember Blaylock proudly gave to us, that we stand with Keller ISD. Was our stance binding on them? No, but it sent a message that the leaders of the city of Fort Worth stood for what was right. And today what we're doing is sending a message to Tarrant County and those people that would seek to silence voices what is right. And so I would ask all of my colleagues here today, regardless of if your specific district is directly impacted, to understand the enormous impact that this particular redistricting has on all residents across the city. And today, we're leaders for not just District 2 or District 4 or 6 or 8 or District 9, but we're leaders for all of the city of Fort Worth. Thank you.
I believe that's the conclusion of our discussion among council members. Councilmember Nettles, go ahead, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to kind of talk through the process, and I'm glad that Councilman Laura Dust brought it up. One of the process for CPs placed on the agenda is that prior to 2 years ago, two council members can come together and put a CP on the agenda to discuss something on the dais. Prior to that, if you don't have a CP, it's our city manager and our mayor who sits and sets the agenda for projects to come to the city of Fort Worth. And that's how we have done it in the city of Fort Worth. And so we have a CP process, means council proposal. And council proposal means a council member proposal to go to the board of directors for the city council. And so here recently, in the last 2 years, Councilman McCrane wanted to change that policy and add 4 signatures, because he felt that if 4 people on this council agreed together, then maybe it's something that we all should talk about. And so we went from 2 members signing a council proposal to 4 members signing a council proposal. And some of us did not agree, but the majority of the council agreed to do it. So here we are with 4. And this county has been pushing this redistricting. And the city of Fort Worth have been monitoring and have been watching. And early Friday morning, I received numerous of calls. Councilman Nettles, what can the city of Fort Worth do to show their support to the residents of Tarrant County and the residents of the city of Fort Worth? Seeing Mayor Jim Ross come out openly and say he condemned the fact the redistricting happened in Tarrant County because it would directly affect the residents of Arlington. Seeing Mansfield, Michael Evans talk about how it's going to affect his city. Received calls from Everman City as well as Forest Hill City. I got on the phone and I started calling to see how can we do it. And I would tell you, one of the first phone calls I called, the individual said, I hate to put this pressure on our city staff to come up with a proposal at the last minute. And I said that we have to do something. And so first I want to take the opportunity to thank Leanne for taking the opportunity to help put together this proposal and city staff at the very last minute in order to get it on the agenda. Why did we do this today? Next week, this council has voted that we do not have meetings after the holiday, so we won't meet next Tuesday. The next meeting we have is June 3rd. It is a work session meeting. It is not a voting council meeting. That is the same day that the Tarrant County Commissioners Court would take a vote on redistricting. And so it is important for us as a city body to send a letter, send a proposal prior to that vote. And that is the single reason why this resolution is on the dais for today. Secondarily to that, knowing that we only need 4 signatures, trying to navigate calling different individuals. You'll see on the CP that some who agree with the CP wasn't able to get on the CP because of the time stretch to have it done by 5. Others, I didn't have opportunity to call. I did have opportunity to call Councilman Michael Crane. So I will say publicly to Councilman Lauderdale, I apologize for not giving you a call about the CP prior to it hitting the agenda. What I did do is I spoke with Leanne. I said, City Attorney, I wanted to make sure that this CP is not partisan. I want to make sure that we talk about things that directly affect the city of Fort Worth residents. To me, it's not about reds neighborhoods or blue neighborhoods. It's about projects and infrastructure that's going to take place. And for District 8 specifically, will be hit hard. We have several projects that we have partnered with Tarrant County with major roadways that widen the roadways and deal with flooding in our far south district. And those 2 streets that we have partnered with different cities and the county, as well as the city of Fort Worth and Cobb, those streets will be moved out of one precinct into another precinct. And with the county, each commissioner has an opportunity to control their budget, which streets they're going to fund and which streets they're not going to fund. And we have seen historically with this new commissioner court that they have killed projects and deals and took money, such as from Girls Inc., and all of us was disappointed about that for whatever racial issues that they have. And so for me and for District 8 and for the city of Fort Worth, it is vitally important that we not only put this resolution in motion, but we tell the county that you can't just affect an entire city of Fort Worth with just redrawing lines because you want to pick the person of your choice. And so that is why I'm so adamant about it today. That is why I put it on the agenda today. And I also want to articulate, since we've been elected, this body have been elected since 2021 through 2025, we have had over 13 CPs that come to this dais, and every one of those 13 CPs, we have waived the rules in order to vote on them. I understand that you may not agree with the CP. I understand that you may not like the CP, but we have always given the right so that we can at least vote on the CP. And I stand proud, and I think all of us have pride in representing our constituents today. And so let your pride show whether you agree with their redistricting or whether you're not. Do it with your chest. Do it with your head held high. Let's take this vote today and show where we are in the city of Fort Worth. A few more points I want to make today. is this redistricting, redrawing of lines will, with the lack of transparency and public process and public engagements. You guys know me. I've been here the last 4 years, and one of the main things I have always talked about is a public process. I don't care if we're hiring the library director. We need a public process because it's important that the residents matter, their voice matter. We went through this process, and a lot of us on this dais kind of had some words to say towards each other during our redistricting. It's because we were fighting for our constituency. This is no different. When we had an issue with Forward ISD, we all signed a letter. Mayor Parker went down to the school board and spoke on the issue. We didn't have a say in how they operate the Forward ISD, but we had a say in how we feel about how they operate in Forward ISD. We did the same thing with the Keller ISD. I wasn't in the conversations about why Keller ISD shouldn't split. I really wasn't concerned because I trusted my counterpartners who live in Keller ISD to stand and be the voice for this entire council. And so I too put on a gold ribbon. I too supported them. Even not even reading 2 cents of what they wrote down is because I trust those who I sit with. And so today, I'm asking this council, those things that I articulated in my brief and my comments and what my other council members have articulated, trust the fact that we're standing not against Tarrant County, we're standing for the residents of Tarrant County. We need to oppose this, we need to vote on this resolution, and we need to approve it. Those are my comments.
Council, that's the conclusion of our discussion. We're going to vote on the waiver for the rules, suspending the rules. I think there's already a motion on the floor. Yes, Leanne, you're good with that? Okay. Got a motion on the floor in a second. Please vote. Motion carries. 9 votes is what you needed for this. So now we're going to move forward with a vote for CP 333. I can entertain a motion.
I move to approve council proposal -333.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor and a second. Any other discussion by council members? I'm going to say this. Thank you all for your public comments today. I will say to my council members, as your mayor, and really for the office, it is so important that we communicate. And I know that life is busy and we all have a lot going on. And so in the past, I have attempted, and you can hold me accountable to this, but whether it's been on a budget discussion and a management letter, I gave opportunity for unanimous decision. And I wish I had been contacted on Friday because I could have shared some very helpful information in my close conversations with Mayor Ross in Arlington over the last week. Jim and I are close friends, and he afforded me the opportunity to know what he was moving forward with in City of Arlington. They've hired outside counsel to look closely at what's happening to their city because there is a lot of concern. Moving possibly to 3 new commissioners in Arlington rather than just 1, which I understand why that would be problematic. A lot of discussion today about the way the City of Fort Worth conducted redistricting. And we all have battle wounds to prove from that. It was not easy. And I'm very proud that at the end of this audience may not all know this, it was a unanimous vote by this body to appoint or create those 2 new council districts and move us forward as a city. And as a result, this is the district, this is the body you have. A few things make me sad today. We've said Democrat and Republican more times than I ever remember in this chamber. And as I have often said, it is irrelevant to city business. It really is. I appreciate the language in the resolution. I do, because I do think it was trying to focus on a few issues that we think we all can agree on. Transportation projects continue to be a top priority. So I'm actually going to offer amendment language to the resolution. I don't agree with the last now, therefore, and whereas. I think actually redistricting is helpful. I'm disappointed in 2020 they didn't really look more closely at this because I think it afforded an opportunity to do this in the mid-century, in the mid-decade, which is unique. If we really want Tarrant County to listen, I don't think this is the way to do that. And so what I'm going to offer to the authors of the CP, if you'd like to vote on it as is, that's okay. I think what will likely happen is we'll have an opportunity, maybe during executive session, to learn what City of Arlington has learned next week. There could be another resolution that's voted on after they vote on the maps. I've not talked directly to any of the commissioners other than Councilmember Ramirez about this. To Councilmember Beck's point, they were very clear and transparent. This is an inherently very political process. And I can't remember your words, Jeanette, but they were well stated. I do think there are ramifications for this as a county. Every single thing right now feels like it's about whether you are blue or red. Everything. And it is dividing this city, and it is dividing this county, and it is unacceptable. And so my job is to govern and do what is best for the city of Fort Worth. I don't think this CP is the right direction because I want to be really clear to Tarrant County where we are. I don't think we've had a chance at all to deliberate as a body. I know that every council member was not contacted. So that's my decision today, but it's not a reflection of my displeasure with the way they've conducted redistricting in Tarrant County. It's not the right way to do it. We had to subject ourselves to hours and hours of public testimony, many maps drawn, tiers in back hallways, really working together to draw a map that we thought was best reflective for the city of Fort Worth, and that's where we got. So I appreciate bringing this important issue forward. I hope to continue to work with Tarrant County. It is too important. You need a commissioner's court that is collaborative. Each of us have had major projects we've had to work on together for our community with the county. And I just am heeding a warning here that we're headed down a really, really dangerous path in this county, in this city. And I'm deeply disappointed. And so my vote today is not a reflection on any approval for Tarrant County. And so you may very well see me at the next few meetings have a more robust resolution to move forward and work with my council colleagues on what that may look like. So that's my decision today. And I do appreciate the discussion. I think it was important, and I think we were all respectful. And with that, please vote, council.
Mayor, just point of clarification, I'm unsure what I'm voting on, and
You're voting on the resolution as is.
you made a substitute motion.
Yeah, I'm just going to let it. I didn't make a motion. No motion. Just you can vote on it as is. I'll work on that in the next few weeks. Motion carries. Motion carries.